guys, and welcome back to Janki on the radio. It's Book Talk Thursday, and today we're diving into a book that stirred up a lot of conversation over the years. Yes, it's The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Now, I know, this book is a bit of a headache. People in high schools all across the United States either love it or hate it. But it's a headache with a purpose and a romantic adoration with a reason. Behind all the ranting and the confusion is a very powerful theme. This theme threads the novel together. The theme of innocence and losing innocence. Let's start with the title. If a body catch a body comin' through their eye. If a body catch a body comin' through their eye. That is a line from a poem that Holden hears in chapter 16, and it sticks with him. And it should stick with us, because it captures the heart of what Holden is truly searching for. He doesn't want to grow up. He doesn't want other kids to fall into the same world he thinks he is full of. His favorite words. He doesn't want kids to fall into a world of phonies. Phonies are huge in Holden's mind. But let's take a step back. This book is what we call a Bildungsroman, which is a really fancy word for a coming-of-age novel. And in a lot of stories like this, there's a moment or moments where the main character starts to realize the world isn't as innocent or as childish as they once perceived it. Or, to juxtapose, that the character themselves is growing up. But The Catcher in the Rye is interesting. Holden doesn't just realize the fact that he's growing up. He actively fights it, despising it. He hates growing up, and he talks about how he doesn't want to grow up. We see this when Holden talks about himself and his experiences. Holden's a 16-year-old from New York, and he's been kicked out of a bunch of prep schools, which are boarding schools. He's not dumb. He's far from it. He talks about how he passed his English class. Choosy and picky, but yes, he's a smart guy. But he's struggling. Though his family seems well off, his dad's a lawyer, his mother's a stay-at-home mom, which is normal for the time, and he's got 3 siblings. Well, 2. Let me explain. DB, who is a writer in Hollywood, and Phoebe, his little sister. This is the interesting part. Holden has a younger brother named Allie, who passed away from leukemia. And Allie's death, that changed everything for Holden. We first meet Allie in chapter 5. And he's not just a 2-dimensional memory that Holden keeps talking about throughout the novel. He becomes a symbol. He becomes a symbol for Holden. Allie represents pure innocence, this sense of a child forever. And losing Allie made Holden terrified of change, of growing up, and of losing the people he loves. That fear comes out in how he sees the world. Here's that special word. Phony. Holden hates phoniness, and to him, phoniness equals adulthood. He says about his old preparatory school, Elkton Hills, quote, "It's full of phonies, and all you do is study so that you can learn enough to be smart enough to buy a goddamn Cadillac someday." Okay, Holden doesn't like Cadillacs. Me neither. Don't worry, Holden. I'm more of a sports car person. But he's not really talking about cars here. He's talking about school, but really he's talking about his life. He thinks that the older people get, the more they lie to themselves and the world. He doesn't want to be a part of that. He doesn't want to be a phony, a fake, a dishonest person to the world. So, to oppose that, Holden pushes back. He pushes back really hard. He gets bad grades to prove that he's not a phony. He disconnects from people. And he walks away from situations where he feels pressured to grow up. We see this when Holden and Stradlater talk about Jane. And Stradlater punches him. But Holden doesn't reach a resolution. He just leaves his current preparatory school, Pensy Prep. And Holden constantly refers back to his old school, too. As we see in the quote, "One of the biggest reasons I left Elkton Hills was because I was surrounded by phonies, that's all. They were coming in the goddamn window." Okay, strong language and a couple anger issues. But let's let that go. Holden's a teenage boy. It's dramatic, but it's also super revealing. Holden talks about feeling trapped by the idea that the world is fake. And the only thing he thinks is real? Innocence. Childhood. Right? Holden thinks childhood is something he can grasp. So he thinks it's real. Including people like Allie, his younger dead brother, and Phoebe, his younger alive sister. And keep in mind, they're both younger and children. Holden loves children. Let's zoom in on Phoebe for a second. Holden absolutely adores her. And who wouldn't? Phoebe's a pretty smart 10-year-old. He does so much to adore her that he sneaks into his parents' apartment to see her in chapter 21. And we see that he talks about her with so much love. You'd like her. I mean, if you told old Phoebe something, she knows exactly what the hell you're talking about. She's smart and all. Holden doesn't just love her. He wants to protect her. He wants to protect her from the childhood that he couldn't protect. Allie's childhood. That's where the catcher in the rye image comes. He wants to catch a body. But more on that later, okay? Holden loves Phoebe. And his love of Phoebe leads him to do some very interesting things. Holden's idea on catching a body might seem weird, and you might be wondering, what is he saying? But Holden's goal in catching a body is to protect young children from falling off a cliff into innocence. And it is extended on this idea when Phoebe asks Holden about what he wants to be when he grows up, when Holden does sneak back into his home. And instead of saying a doctor or a lawyer or some fancy profession, Holden says something really innocent. Interesting. Holden and innocence. How crazy, right? Holden says, and I quote, "I keep picturing all these little kids playing some game in this big field of rye and all. I have to come out from somewhere and catch them. That's all I'd do all day. I'd just be the catcher in the rye and all." Boom. There it is. That's it. That's Holden's whole dream. To catch little kids before they fall off this cliff. This unimaginably scary cliff, right? This unimaginably scary cliff that is them growing up. Them losing their innocence before they go into this world of phonies and they become phonies themselves. Holden wants to stop children from losing their innocence. He wants to keep them on this ledge where they're kids forever innocent, you know? There's this really touching scene before that part that reflects something of what Holden feels, in which Holden helps this little kid in the New York Museum, whichever museum it might be in the best city in the world, New York, find the mummies. And it seems really random. It might seem weird, but it hits you right in the gut if you know what you're reading. It goes, "The best thing, though, in that museum was that everything always stayed right where it was. Nobody's moving. The only thing that would be different would be you." That's chilling if you know what he's actually saying. Holden is reflecting on the idea that he doesn't like change. Change is uncertain and it's cold, and Holden doesn't like it. Holden wants to freeze time. But deeper than that, he wants to freeze himself. Because if everything stays the same, he doesn't have to face change. He doesn't have to face growing up or grief, like Allie's death, or letting go. This fear, this resistance to change, it all keeps tying back to Allie. Like I said, Allie is a huge symbol in this novel. Holden's pain over his brother's death is everywhere. In the beginning of the book, he even says, quote, "You'd have liked him." This is about Allie. He was 2 years younger than I was, but he was about 50 times as intelligent. God, he was a nice kid. Little brother affection, you see? Holden doesn't just miss Allie, he idealizes him. He sees him as this perfect kid frozen in time that no amount of phoniness has touched. Allie is this silent, unharmed, perfect, pure child. And by fighting against the world that so cruelly took away Allie, Holden doesn't want kids to fall into adulthood. So he's very good, in his own mind, at pulling kids back in and not letting them fall off the cliff and grow up. And it's scary because, in my own personal anecdote, growing up is terrifying. I'm 17, turning 18 in a year, and I feel like I'm not ready. But people say no one is ready, though overnight it happens. It truly, really does happen. You grow up. And it's scary in its own sense. It truly is. But you learn to get over it. And you learn to love yourself and let all the phoniness go and become a version of yourself. Or maybe you do keep a sense of some phoniness in you, but you go with it. But back to the novel. Through chapter 25, Holden takes a last resort, in which he says he'll become a deaf-mute hitchhiker that'll go west. A little bit ableist, but nonetheless, it's really important in the novel. Though his sister comes to stop him. Yes, our little Phoebe. He says she'll go with him. Holden disagrees, and they have a huge meltdown, a fight, the both of them, and Phoebe cries. But Holden seems to console her, and to do that, he takes her to the zoo and they go on a carousel. Holden, once again, says, quote, "That's the one nice thing about carousels. They always play the same songs," quote. Another reference back to his love of the same, the things that never change, because that's the only way things get grounded and he becomes a grounded man. But at the end of that novel, at the end of that chapter in specific, Holden says something really powerful. The thing with kids is, if they want to grab for the golden ring, you have to let them do it and not say anything. If they fall off, they fall off, but it's bad if you say anything to them. That's a really powerful line, because throughout the entire novel, Holden has tried to protect innocence, keep it in its own little box of purity, and spread it to everyone so that, in his mind, nobody grows up. But Holden realizes that he can't, and kids must grow up. This brings us back to the title, The Catcher in the Rye. It isn't just a poetic line. It's Holden's fantasy job. It's his way of fighting back against the world that he thinks is too cruel. But with the quote about the carousel, Holden realizes that life doesn't freeze. People grow and people change. And he can't protect everyone. It's not his job. By the end of the novel, we start to see Holden maybe learning that. Just a little. Not a full circle, but it's him getting to the conclusion. He's not suddenly okay. It's not magical. But there's a shift. And that is really powerful. To me, and to many others, it's what makes the novel so powerful. It's what makes me cry every time I read it. And this time it made me cry so much when I went home. It's honest. It's powerful. It's messy and it's painful and it's so real because it happens to many of us. We're afraid and we don't want to grow up. And it's about a boy that wants to save something that feels like it's already slipping away. And I feel like that too. I'm graduating next year and I don't feel ready. I don't feel like I've lived my life and I don't know where my 17 years went. I don't feel like they were my 17 years at all and I wish I could go fight for them back. It's honest, and The Catcher in the Rye is a great way to explain it. So yeah, The Catcher in the Rye might just be a little frustrating. But it's frustrating because it's honest and it's real, okay? It shows us what it means to mourn, to resist change, to exercise personal belief, and what a phony means. Yeah, The Catcher in the Rye teaches us what a phony means. It's super important. It also teaches us what it means to desperately hold on to innocence in a world that keeps moving forward. That's all for today's episode of Book Talk Thursday on John Keys Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to catch us soon for another episode. And remember, don't be a phony. See you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Miss Hawken. Have a nice time. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.